The joke that was meant to hurt. The stars above the planet. Tarakan were sharp and cold. In a grand palace high in the mountains, the alien baron stood in his golden hall, laughing with his generals. His laughter was not warm, it was cruel. "This will teach the humans their place," he said, his voice full of pride. "Let them see what happens when they touch royalty." His daughter, Lorene, stood quietly beside him. She had bright violet eyes and long silver hair. She wore a royal dress, but her heart felt empty. She knew her father didn't love her. She was just another tool in his plans. "What is the name of the human?" she asked softly. "Jacob," the baron said with a sneer. "A poor farmer on a dusty earth colony. He doesn't even own a hovercar." Lorene closed her eyes. This was her punishment for questioning her father in public, for speaking kindly about humans, for not being cold like him. Now he was sending her away as a joke bride, not to a noble, not to an alien prince, but to a simple human man. It was meant to shame her, and it was meant to insult the humans. The next day, without a ceremony, without music or gifts, she was sent away in a transport ship, alone. No guards, no protection, just orders. Stay with the human for 1 solar cycle and then return. The ship landed in the middle of a dry, dusty valley. The house was small, made of stone and solar panels. There was no one outside. Lorene stepped down slowly, her shoes crunching against the gravel. Then the door opened. Jacob stood there, tall, brown-haired, with a tired face and strong hands. He looked at her with surprise, then confusion. "Are you... Lorene?" "Yes," she said, lifting her chin. "Your joke bride." Jacob frowned. "Joke?" She nodded. "My father sent me here to humiliate both of us. So let's just get this over with. I won't get in your way." But Jacob didn't respond with anger. He stepped aside and said, "You must be cold, come inside." Lorene blinked. This wasn't what she expected. Inside, the house was plain but clean. There was a fire burning, a soft blanket on the couch. The kitchen smelled like fresh bread. "You hungry?" Jacob asked. Lorene sat stiffly. "I don't eat human food." He shrugged. "Suit yourself. But the bread's good." That night, Lorene stayed in a small room Jacob had cleaned for her. She sat on the bed looking out the window. This was not a palace. This was not luxury, but it was quiet, peaceful. She remembered how her father always spoke of humans. They're weak, dirty, primitive, but Jacob wasn't cruel, he wasn't loud. He didn't try to touch her or command her. The next morning, she expected him to act differently. Maybe he would order her around or show his true nature. But instead, he offered her tea. When she refused, he nodded and went outside to fix a broken solar panel. Lorene watched him from the window. Sweat on his forehead, dirt on his hands, but there was focus in his eyes. He worked hard. He worked with care. Days passed. Lorene stayed silent most of the time. But Jacob would speak to her anyway. Not much, just simple things. "The wind's strong today." Or, "Want to help with the garden?" At first, she refused everything. But one day, after watching him struggle to carry heavy tools, she quietly picked one up and followed him outside. Jacob didn't smile. He didn't make fun of her. He just nodded and handed her a pair of gloves. That night, as they sat near the fire, she asked, "Why don't you treat me like a slave? Or a prize?" Jacob looked confused. "Because you're not. You're a person." Lorene looked at the flames for a long time. No one had ever said that to her before. In space, her father watched from his cruiser, growing bored. "She'll be begging to come home soon," he told his advisors. "Let her live with the dirt and the filth. She'll break." But Lorene wasn't breaking. Something inside her was changing, and so was Jacob. Neither of them knew it yet. But this joke would soon shake the stars. Lorene expected to be treated like a burden, or worse, like a joke. After all, her father had sent her away with laughter in his voice and no kindness in his heart. In the Baron's world, power was everything, and humans were beneath notice. But this human, Jacob, wasn't following the script. He didn't. ask where she came from. He didn't try to take control, and he didn't look at her like she was some strange creature. He simply gave her a place to stay, a roof over her head, and silence when she needed it. That silence was not cold, it was peaceful. It gave her room to breathe. At first, Lorene didn't know what to do with this freedom. On her homeworld, every step was watched. Every word was judged. But here, on this dusty colony planet, she could walk through the garden barefoot. She could stand under the sun without guards. Jacob never stopped her. He never even looked over his shoulder. She started to test him. She left dishes unwashed. He cleaned them quietly. She refused meals. He still made enough for two. She broke. A tool. He fixed it without blame. He never yelled. He never forced. He never asked for anything. It made her angry at first. Angry. And curious. One day she followed him out to the crop fields. The land was dry, cracked, nearly dead. Jacob worked under the burning sun, sweating through his shirt, pulling weeds, fixing the water line. "Why do you do all this alone?" She asked, arms crossed. Jacob didn't look up. "Because if I don't, no one else will." "You could have refused me," she said. "You know I was sent here to humiliate you." "I know," he said simply. "But I don't care about the dear Baron's games." That answer shook something deep in her. Back home, everything was a game, about power, control, winning and losing. Here it was different, honest, real. That evening, a sudden sandstorm hit the valley. Wind howled like wild beasts and sharp dust filled the air. The solar fence buzzed and sparked. Jacob ran out without thinking. Lorene hesitated, then grabbed a scarf and followed. Together, they fought the wind, locking gates, covering equipment, saving what they could. Lorene's hands bled from gripping sharp wires. Jacob shielded her body with his when a fence panel flew loose. By the time the storm passed, they were exhausted, covered in dirt, hearts pounding. Inside, Jacob poured her water and gave her clean clothes. Lorene sat by the fire, hands shaking slightly. "You could have left me," she whispered. "I don't leave people behind," Jacob said. "You don't even know me." Jacob looked at her, really looked. "I don't need to know your story to see that you're not just some spoiled alien girl. You worked beside me today, that's enough." No one had ever said something like that to her before. Lorene stayed quiet the next few days, but inside her something was moving. Not fear, not shame, but a strange warmth. Jacob had no reason to be kind, and yet he was. Not once had he asked for her name, her body, or her loyalty. He only gave. And Lorene, daughter of the Baron, born in a palace of ice and gold, felt more human every time she stepped into his world. One night, she sat beside him as he repaired an old communication device. "Why do you live alone?" she asked. Jacob paused. "Because the people I cared about are gone. War took some. Time took the rest. Doesn't that hurt?" "Every day," he said. "But pain means I still remember them." Lorene looked at him in the firelight. His face was tired but strong, honest. She wanted to ask more. But outside, beyond the hills, a shadow had already landed. A silent ship with orders from the Baron. The test had arrived, and soon Jacob would have to choose between survival and standing beside an alien girl he never asked for, but could no longer push away. The storm had passed, but something had changed between them. Lorene no longer sat in silence during meals. She didn't avoid Jacob's eyes. Now she watched him closely. The way he moved with quiet strength. The way he fixed what was broken without complaint. She had lived in castles made of crystal and walked through halls of gold. But never had she felt this safe. It wasn't the kind of safety that came from guards or high walls. It was the kind that lived in a man's actions, how he treated others when no one was watching. Jacob didn't talk much, but every day, through simple kindness, he told her she mattered. One evening, the power went out. A broken solar node couldn't take the extra charge from the storm. The lights died. The heater buzzed, then went quiet. Cold slipped in like a thief. Jacob lit the fireplace, tossed 2 blankets on the couch, and sat across from her. "Sorry," he said. "Tech's old." "It's all right," Lorene replied. "I've survived worse." But she hadn't meant physical cold. She meant all those years of living under her father's rule, surrounded by riches, but starved for warmth. Hours passed. The wind outside howled again. Not a storm, but sharp enough to rattle the walls. Jacob threw a few more logs into the fire. "You should sleep," he said. Lorene didn't move. Her eyes stayed on the flames. "Did you ever feel like you were born in the wrong place?" Jacob looked at her, not with surprise, but understanding. "Yeah," he said. "On Earth, I always felt too poor, too simple, never good enough for the cities. But out here, alone, I found peace." She nodded slowly. "I was raised to be a perfect daughter, royal blood, obedient, but I always felt hollow inside. No one ever asked what I wanted." Jacob leaned forward. "What do you want?" Lorene hesitated. No one had ever asked her that, not once in her life. She looked down. "I don't know, but I think I'm starting to find out." There was a long silence. Not awkward, just full, heavy with something neither of them could name. Then, softly, without thinking, Lorene stood up and walked toward him. She sat down beside Jacob, not across the room, but close. The fire warmed her hands, but his presence warmed something else, something deeper. "I'm not afraid of you," she said quietly. "You shouldn't be," Jacob replied. "No, I mean, I was raised to believe humans were wild, violent, less than us. But you're gentle." Jacob looked at her, eyes steady. "And you're not the spoiled alien princess I expected either." She smiled, a small one, but it lit her whole face. For a moment, the silence between them changed. It became charged, like the air before a lightning strike. Then it happened. She leaned her head against his shoulder. Jacob didn't move. He didn't ruin the moment with words. He just sat there, letting her be close. And in that stillness, 2 hearts that had never belonged anywhere finally began to beat in rhythm. But outside, in the shadows of the cliffs, someone else was watching. A figure in armor, the Baron's agent, eyes glowing red through night vision lenses. A quiet signal was sent back to the Baron's cruiser. Contact made. The human has grown close to the girl. The Baron smiled darkly as he read the message. Then it's time. He didn't care about love. He didn't believe in it. This was war. And war always needed a lesson. On the edge of peace, danger was coming, and the first strike would fall at dawn. The sun rose quietly over the valley, painting the sky in soft orange light. Inside the small home, Lorene and Jacob shared their morning without many words. A silent comfort had grown between them. Their movements matched, their eyes met more often, and when they smiled, it was real. But that peace was not built to last. At the edge of the property, just beyond the old stone fence, a ship had landed hours before. It was small, sleek, and silent, painted in the deep black of the Baron's private fleet. No one on this planet had seen a craft like it before. That was the point. The door creaked open. The figure who stepped out wore battle armor with the Baron's red crest on the chest plate. His name was Commander Vex. He was tall, strong, and cruel. He had served the Baron for 30 years, never questioning an order, never failing a mission. His task today was simple: break the human. He walked to the door like a visitor, smiling like a friend. Jacob opened the door slowly, cautious but polite. "Good morning," Vex said. "I was passing through. I heard there was a human out here. Thought I'd say hello." Jacob nodded slowly. "You're not from around here." "No," Vex said, stepping inside without permission. "But I've heard stories about a human man living with royalty." Lorene stepped into view and Vex's smile sharpened. "Ah, there she is. Still alive. That's a surprise." Jacob stepped between them. "You're not welcome here." Vex chuckled. "Oh, I think I am. You see, the Baron sent me to check in on his daughter." Lorene narrowed her eyes. "You mean test us?" Vex shrugged. "Call it what you like. All I need to know is whether this little game has gone too far." Then without warning he struck. His fist moved faster than Lorene could see, but Jacob caught it. Barely. The impact sent him stumbling back, blood already forming on his lip. Lorene gasped. "This is between me and him," Vex growled. "Let's see what kind of creature you've attached yourself to." Jacob didn't back down. He stood, fists clenched. He had no weapons, no armor, just raw, human will. The fight began. Vex was trained, brutal, and enhanced by tech. Jacob was none of those things. But he moved with purpose. He dodged the first blow, blocked the second, landed one hard punch to Vex's side. It barely made the alien stumble. Then Vex swept Jacob's legs and slammed him to the floor. "Pathetic," Vex said, raising his boot. Lorene screamed, diving between them. "Stop!" Vex hesitated. "Just long enough." Jacob surged up and tackled him into the wall. They crashed into the kitchen, breaking the old shelves. Glass shattered. Blood stained the floor. Some alien, some human. Vex finally pinned Jacob by the throat. "You were supposed to beg," he hissed. "You were supposed to break." Jacob's voice came out rough but steady. "I won't let you take her." Lorene grabbed the med kit. Her hands shook, but her heart didn't. She opened the hidden drawer under the couch and pulled out a small glowing rod. Alien tech. Healing. Forbidden for humans. But she didn't care. She ran to Jacob's side as Vex stepped back, confused by the human stubbornness. She activated the device and pressed it against Jacob's chest. Light poured into his wounds. Bones snapped back into place, the bleeding slowed. His eyes fluttered open. "You healed him with royal tech?" Vex said in disbelief. Lorene stood in front of Jacob like a shield. "Yes. He's more loyal than any soldier my father ever had." Vex backed away, stunned by her defiance. "You've changed," he said coldly. "You were meant to return home in shame, not in love." Lorene didn't flinch. "Then maybe your orders were wrong." Vex looked at Jacob, bloody, breathing hard, still on his knees, and saw something terrifying. He saw a man who could not be broken. Without another word, Vex turned and walked away. But as he left, he tapped his wrist. A silent signal. A report sent to the Baron. The human resisted. The girl defended him. Strong emotional bond confirmed. Far away in deep space, the Baron stared at the message with a face like stone. He didn't speak for a long time. Then slowly he stood. "Bring her back," he said. Not as a joke now, but as a threat, because his daughter had fallen for the human, and she was no longer his to command. Lorene sat in the garden Jacob had built with his hands. The soil was dry, but the plants were alive, just like her. The wind blew gently through her hair as she pressed a hand against her lower stomach. Something had changed, something deep and impossible to ignore. It had been days since the fight with Commander Vex. The bruises on Jacob's body had faded, but the memory had not. Every time Lorene closed her eyes, she saw him, on the floor, bleeding, still trying to stand between her and danger. Not because he was told to, not because it was his duty, but because he wanted to protect her. And now, she carried something of his. The small scanner in her hand blinked twice, then glowed green. Pregnant. Lorene dropped the device. Her breath caught in her throat. She couldn't believe it, not because it was impossible, but because she had never imagined a future like this. She had been given to a human as a joke, a temporary sentence, a punishment. But now her life was tied to his. She stood and walked inside, Jacob was fixing a broken light panel when she entered. She looked pale. Her hands were shaking. He dropped his tools and rushed to her. "What's wrong? Are you hurt?" She couldn't speak. She just reached out, took his hand, and placed it gently over her belly. He froze. Then he looked into her eyes. "No," he whispered. Lorene nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "Yes, it's ours." Silence wrapped around them like a soft cloak. Jacob didn't run. He didn't panic. He just held her. His arms were warm and strong and steady. For the first time in her life, Lorene cried in someone's arms, not out of fear but from feeling safe. But that safety would not last. In the dark space above the planet, the Baron was no longer amused. His daughter had gone too far. A broken spirit he could forgive. A rebellious child could be punished. But a daughter pregnant with a human child, that was treason. He summoned his warship. On the planet, Lorene and Jacob tried to prepare for what might come. She taught him how to read alien code. He showed her how to use an old energy rifle. They made plans, half serious, half hopeful. But deep down they both knew the truth. They couldn't hide forever. That night Jacob found Lorene sitting under the stars, looking up with worry in her eyes. "You regret it?" he asked softly. She turned to him. "No, never." "Even though he'll come?" "Yes," she said, placing his hand on her stomach again. "Because this child is proof that peace is possible, that two worlds can meet without war." Jacob kissed her forehead. "We'll protect that proof," he said. But as the wind picked up and the sky flashed with unnatural light, they both knew. The real battle hadn't even begun yet. The sky cracked open with thunder, though there were no clouds. It wasn't weather. It was power. A massive alien warship pushed through the atmosphere like a falling mountain. Its engines screamed across the valley, shaking the land below. Birds scattered. Animals fled. Even the soil seemed to tremble under its weight. Jacob stepped outside with a rifle in hand. Though he knew it wouldn't help, Lorene stood beside him, calm but cold. She wore a long coat to cover her belly, but she knew it would not stay hidden for long. The ship landed with a force that flattened the nearby trees. Its surface gleamed with the golden armor of royal design. The Baron did not sneak in this time. He came like a storm. The doors opened and the Baron stepped out. He hadn't changed. Towering, sharp eyes, proud posture, but his face held no humor now, no arrogance, just fury, buried under control. Lorene walked forward before Jacob could stop her. "Father," she said flatly. The Baron looked her over with a long, hard stare. His gaze stopped at the shape of her midsection. His eyes narrowed. "What have you done?" "I've chosen my life," she replied. "Not the one you gave me, the one I built." "With a human?" he spat. "This is filth. You disgrace your bloodline." She didn't flinch. "No, I gave it purpose." The Baron's guard stepped forward, raising weapons. Jacob raised his own in return, knowing it was useless. But Lorene raised her hand. "Stop," she said. Everyone paused. She took off her coat slowly, revealing the rounded curve beneath. The Baron stepped back as if slapped. "There is a child inside me," she said. "Your grandchild." The word hit the air like thunder. The soldiers behind the Baron shifted uncomfortably. Even his captain looked unsure. The Baron's voice dropped. "You will return home, alone. This thing will be removed." Lorene's voice turned ice cold. "You touch my child, and I will never forgive you." Jacob stepped beside her. He didn't speak, but his presence was enough. He stood not in front of her, but beside her, shoulder to shoulder. Equal. The Baron's fists clenched. He had all the power, ships, soldiers, weapons. But for the first time, he looked uncertain. "You dare challenge me?" he asked her. "No," she said. I left your world because I didn't belong to it. You taught me to obey. But she looked at Jacob, taught me to feel. And this child is not a mistake. He is hope. The Baron looked at her, then at Jacob, and then at her stomach. He saw the truth. He saw the future he had tried to prevent, growing right before his eyes. For a long moment no one moved. Then he turned. Without a word, he walked back into his ship. His guards followed, silent. The warship rose back into the sky, leaving behind a crater of dust and silence. Lorene fell to her knees, shaking. Jacob caught her. You were brave, he whispered. I was terrified, she replied. But you didn't let him see it. She placed his hand back over her belly. He saw the future, she said softly. And it scared him. They didn't know if the Baron would return with war or with peace, but for now he had left them alive. And in this quiet moment, they had already won something no army could take away. A new beginning. Days passed. The skies remained clear. No more ships came, no messages, no threats, just silence, from a man who had once ruled planets with fear, now unsure of how to fight something he couldn't control. Love. Lorene spent her mornings in the garden, her hands in the soil, her face warm under the sun. Jacob built a small cradle with pieces of salvaged wood and old alien metal. It creaked a little, but it was strong. Like them. They didn't speak much about the Baron anymore, but they both knew he was watching. Somewhere out in the stars, Lorene's father was likely waiting, thinking, planning. But something had shifted. The Baron had seen his daughter stand tall, belly full of life, beside the very creature he had tried to insult, and in that moment the joke had turned on him. Jacob knew the danger wasn't over, but he no longer lived in fear. He had something to protect. A purpose. A family. One evening, while the stars burned quietly overhead, a small drone landed in their yard. It didn't make a sound. Lorene approached it with caution, Jacob behind her. The drone projected a single message. No voice. Just one line written in the Baron's royal code. If the child is born, he carries my blood. I will not claim him, but I will not harm him. Lorene's hands trembled as she read it aloud. Jacob placed a hand on her shoulder. That's not peace, but it's not war either. She nodded. It's something, and that something was enough. Weeks later, the child came into the world, half human, half alien. Small fingers, soft skin, bright violet eyes just like Lorene's, and a firm grip like his father's. They named him Aaron. In his cries, they heard a new beginning. In his breath, a future no throne or bloodline could deny. Lorene held him close, as Jacob whispered stories of Earth. She told Aaron stories of stars, of fire, of survival, of how a girl meant to be a joke found her freedom in the arms of a simple man, and how love had ended a war before it even began. They raised him in the valley, where silence was peace, where hands built homes instead of weapons, and where a human and an alien could love without fear. Far away, the Baron stood in his palace of metal and stone. No one saw him look out his window. No one heard the deep breath he took when the report of the birth reached him, and no one saw the small hidden smile on his face when he whispered to himself, strong, like his mother. The galaxy would never understand how a joke became a legend, but Lorene did, and so did Jacob, because what began as an insult became a legacy.